My name is Elise, I'm 26, and for the past year I've been working the night shift at a rural convenience store on the outskirts of a forgotten highway in Maine. It's the kind of store people only notice if they're out of options, burned out travelers, delivery trucks, or families who've taken a wrong exit. There's no neon sign out front, just a faded open 24-hour sticker peeling off the glass door. I liked the job at first, quiet, predictable, no bosses hovering, no coworkers breathing down my neck. But quiet doesn't mean safe. It was late October when the first strange thing happened. A Wednesday night, a little after midnight. The air outside was cold enough to frost the windows. Inside, the buzzing of the fluorescent light seemed louder than usual, and the only other noise was the hum of the soda fridge behind me. I was alone. I always was at this hour. I'd just started making myself instant noodles when the bell above the door chimed. A man walked in, maybe mid-50s. Tall but slightly hunched, with a heavy brown coat that looked damp and worn. His hair was the color of wet steel, sticking up like he'd just run his hands through it. He didn't browse, didn't even glance at the aisles. He just stopped at the end of the counter and stared at me with this odd, lopsided expression. "Long night," I said, trying to sound casual. "You always work alone?" he asked. I blinked. "Yeah, mostly. It's just me this shift." He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. I figured, "You've got a rhythm. You're here every time I pass through." Something about that unsettled me. "Small town," I offered weakly. He smiled. Not warm, not threatening, just wrong. "Elise," he said, like he was testing it on his tongue. My stomach nodded. I wasn't wearing a name tag. Before I could ask how he knew my name, he gestured at the chalkboard sign behind me. "The way you write your E's, wide at the top like little hats. That's not common," I noticed. "Oh," I muttered. He didn't buy anything, just stood there watching me like he was reading a book in a foreign language. Finally, he gave a small nod and said, "Name's Daniel. Just curious, that's all." Then he turned and walked back out into the mist. I told myself it was nothing. Weird customers happen. But he came back. Not every night, just enough to make me uneasy. Sometimes he'd come inside and linger without buying anything. Other times he'd park his car at the far edge of the lot and sit with his headlights off, just a dark shape in the driver's seat. One night, he came in and bought a bottle of water. He leaned on the counter while twisting the cap off. "Doesn't it ever get lonely?" he asked, voice low like we were sharing a secret. "I'm fine," I said. "You must get nervous sometimes," he said, glancing toward the glass doors. "All this darkness, no one around for miles. Anything could happen." "I'm used to it," I said, gripping the edge of the counter. His eyes moved to the back door of the store. "You're smart, keeping that locked. I've noticed you check it around 1:30 every night." The noodles in my stomach turned to ice. "I should get back to work," I said. He gave a small, almost apologetic smile. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Then he walked out again. After that, I started changing small things in my routine. I parked closer to the front door. I kept my keys laced between my fingers when I walked to my car. I added a baseball bat under the counter next to the register. I stopped writing my name on the chalkboard sign. But it didn't help. If anything, the gaps between his visits made it worse. I'd go a week without seeing him and almost convince myself it was over, only for him to reappear like a bad dream. Then came the Polaroids. It was a Monday. I'd just come back from taking the trash out behind the store. When I returned to the counter, there was a single Polaroid sitting on the register. It was me refilling the coffee machine from the night before. The angle was close, like whoever took it had been just outside the window. There was no note, no handwriting, but the top edge of the Polaroid was torn into a jagged point like a tooth. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. The next night, he showed up again. He didn't come inside, just sat in his car with the headlights off. I called the sheriff's office, but out here suspicious person calls are low priority. By the time a deputy drove past 2 hours later, the car was gone. Another night, I found a second Polaroid. This one was of my apartment door, not the outside, inside. Taken from the hallway, just feet from where I sleep. I barely slept after that. I double-checked the locks, wedge a chair under the knob, keep the bat next to my pillow. Every sound in the night felt like a signal. Finally, I snapped. The next time he came inside, I told him to leave or I'd call the police. My voice cracked and I hated it, but I didn't care. He tilted his head like a dog hearing a strange noise. "I'm not dangerous, Elise. I just notice things. You seem like someone who doesn't get noticed the right way. I thought maybe you'd appreciate it." "That's not appreciation," I said. "That's obsession." He blinked slowly. "Would it be better if I acted like everyone else? Pretended I didn't see the way your left shoe heel is wearing out faster than your right? Pretended I didn't know you live alone on Sycamore Lane and that your porch light's been flickering for 3 days?" I reached for the phone. He didn't stop me. When the police came, Daniel didn't run. He just stood there with his hands at his sides. They searched his car, found a notebook filled with dates and times. My schedule, my grocery trips, pages of my name written over and over, smaller and smaller, until it blurred into a dark mass of ink. They took him away. I filed for a restraining order. My boss transferred me to another store 2 towns over. For a while I breathed easier, but 3 weeks later, after closing one night, I found another Polaroid slipped under my windshield wiper. This one was different. It wasn't of me. It was of my new bedroom window, taken from outside. That night, I stayed at a friend's place. When I got home the next morning, nothing was out of place. The locks were still bolted, no sign of forced entry. But I found a third Polaroid on my kitchen counter. It was blank, just white. Except in the bottom corner, someone had drawn one of my wide-topped E's in black ink. That's when it hit me. He wasn't gone. The man the police took was just the beginning, or maybe a decoy. Whoever had been watching me all this time wasn't just one person, and they weren't just noticing, they were practicing. Now I sleep with the bat still next to me. I keep my phone in my hand until my fingers go numb. But sometimes when the wind rattles the windows just right, I swear I can hear a soft click outside, like the sound of a Polaroid camera waiting to develop. Working night shift at a hotel seems harmless until you've done it long enough to notice just how exposed you really are. One person behind a desk, dozens of empty rooms, long dark hallways where anything could be hiding. You're alone, and the longer the night drags, the more that silence feels like it's waiting to be broken. I learned it the hard way. The hotel I worked at wasn't large, 3 floors, maybe 45 rooms total. On weekdays, we'd be lucky to fill 15 of them. It was quiet, almost too quiet sometimes, but I liked the stillness. My shift ran from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. I'd usually pass the time doing paperwork, checking cameras, scrolling my phone. The front doors locked after midnight, and anyone coming in had to buzz. From my little office behind the desk, I could see the entire lobby through a large glass window. The lobby itself was nothing special. A desk, some couches and chairs arranged around a coffee table, a TV that was rarely on, and a corner with vending machines humming in the dark. Everything had that vaguely outdated budget hotel feel. Thin carpets, yellow lighting, the faint smell of old coffee grounds. Nights usually blurred together. Guests came late, asked for rooms, and disappeared upstairs. I learned to recognize regulars and traveling workers. But one night, I buzzed in someone who didn't fit any mold. He arrived just after 11. Tall, maybe 6 feet, mid-40s. Jeans, a hoodie, baseball cap pulled low, a backpack slung over one shoulder. At first glance, he looked like any traveler. He asked for a room, voice steady but quiet, and handed me a credit card. I swiped it, it beeped, and the register showed a green check. I gave him a key card for a second-floor room. The whole time, though, I noticed his eyes. He looked at me too long, like he wasn't just looking at me but memorizing me. I tried to brush it off as awkwardness. He turned, walked toward the elevator, and disappeared from sight. For a while, I thought nothing of it, but around midnight, I looked up, and there he was again. He had come back down, but not to talk to me. He walked past the desk without a word and sat in the lounge, facing the blank TV. No remote in his hand, no phone, no book. He just sat there staring at the screen, his shoulders perfectly straight, hands folded loosely in his lap. At first I figured maybe he couldn't sleep, but half an hour went by, and he didn't move. Not a fidget, not a yawn, nothing. The longer he sat there, the stranger it felt. At one point, I crossed the lobby to get water from the vending machine. As soon as I left the desk, his head turned. He didn't say anything, didn't smile. Just watched me walk all the way across and all the way back, his gaze heavy and unbroken. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was shy, maybe he was off. I went back to my desk, checked the reservation system, and that's when I froze. Room 207, the one I'd given him, showed as vacant. I frowned and clicked again. Still vacant. I checked the check-in log, expecting to see his name. Nothing. The payment screen? No charge, no authorization. It was like I'd never swiped his card at all. A glitch, I thought. Had to be. But I checked the keycard entry log and my stomach dropped. His room door hadn't been opened all night, which meant he never went upstairs. He'd been sitting in the lobby the whole time. When I looked back through the office window, he was still there, same seat, same blank stare. I felt this cold pressure in my chest. Every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't supposed to be here. But I kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe the system had hiccuped. Maybe he just wanted to sit downstairs. But then, just after 1, I glanced up and he was gone. Panic shot through me. I scanned the lobby. Empty. I leaned toward the hallways, and there he was. Standing at the far end near the bathrooms, half in shadow. He wasn't moving, wasn't leaning, just standing there perfectly still, his head angled slightly toward me. I quickly looked back at my computer, pretending I hadn't noticed. My skin crawled the entire time he stayed there. After several minutes, he slowly walked back and sat in the lounge again like nothing had happened. I called my manager at home. She was groggy, annoyed, told me to just keep an eye on him and call the police if he acted threatening. Her tone made me second-guess myself. But inside, I already felt like something was very, very wrong. I pulled up the cameras. The feeds showed him pacing the hallways, standing at dead ends, entering stairwells and staying inside them for 10 minutes, always coming back out. Sometimes he'd stand near the elevators, other times in corners of the lobby where the light didn't reach. He never approached the desk again, but I always caught him watching. It was like he was mapping the place. By 3 in the morning, my nerves were fried. My eyes kept darting to the lounge. At one point, he moved closer, stopping about 15 feet from the desk. He just stood there, staring at me, his expression unreadable. His stillness was the worst part. He didn't twitch or sway. He was like a shadow cut out of the air. Another guest buzzed in not long after, a younger man who looked half drunk. I let him through quickly, and as he crossed the lobby, I saw the stranger's head turn to follow him. His eyes locked onto the guest, tracking him until he vanished into the elevator. Something inside me snapped then. That wasn't harmless. That wasn't nothing. He was studying people. Minutes later, I found him on the camera feed again, this time outside a first-floor guest room. He stood at the door for minutes, motionless, not knocking, not leaving, just standing. That's when I dialed 911. My voice shook as I explained there was a man inside who wasn't supposed to be there, wandering hallways, standing outside rooms. The dispatcher said officers were on their way. When I hung up, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I checked the lobby camera again. He was gone. Then I heard it, the faintest sound of footsteps. Not loud, not rushed, just slow, deliberate steps on carpet. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I peered out of the office window. He was at the desk, standing right across from me, leaning slightly over the counter. His eyes met mine through the glass, unblinking. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost hoarse. "Do you have any food?" The words were so ordinary, but the way he said them made my stomach turn. I forced my voice to stay steady, told him there were vending machines. He stared at me a moment longer, then smiled faintly, a smile that didn't look real, and walked away. I sat frozen in my chair, counting the seconds. When the officers finally arrived, I nearly collapsed with relief. They spotted him instantly, still in the lounge like he'd never moved. They asked for his ID. I couldn't hear the conversation, but within minutes, they were walking him out. One officer came back and explained, the card he'd given me was stolen. He wasn't a guest, he'd never been one. He'd gotten inside under false pretenses and spent hours wandering the building, standing outside doors, watching. They charged him with trespassing and credit card fraud. After they left, I sat in that office shaking until the sun came up. The hotel was quiet again, but it didn't feel safe anymore. And the part that haunts me isn't just that he was there. It's how long he was inside before I realized he wasn't supposed to be. How he moved silently from place to place, always watching, always waiting. I still don't know what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. And every time I close my eyes, I see him again, sitting in that empty lounge, staring at a blank TV like he was waiting for something, waiting for someone.